Hello and welcome back to OT the podcast. We're here to talk about watches, time, and how to spend it. I'm Andy Green.
Felix Schultz.
Felix, how are you?
I am exceptional, as always. This is quite an interesting experience where we're looking at each other on tiny screens.
Yeah, so we're recording remotely, but we've kind of got multi-screen, multi-device sort of setup to keep the magic
I've got
alive.
three-screen Schultz, that's what they call me.
Three screens. Yep. Screen flex. What we've got a few things in store for today's episode, which I'm sure the title gave away.
We've got some royalty. We've got royalty on the show today.
We have an engraving god.
Wow, the king of the engraving nerds,
king of the nerds, Johnny Dowell.
Yeah,
good friend.
Lovely man.
Sort of lovely Jen. I've had the pleasure of sharing quite a few beers with him over the years, which has been a treat. But before we do, Felix,
we've got some stuff.
There's some stuff to talk about. I'm going to let you kick off because you've got an interesting thing to talk about.
It's so you know what I really find great?
What's that?
Family TV that combines light entertainment with one of my son's favorite pastimes, Lego. Or if you're in America, Legos. Or if you're in Adelaide, Lego.
Where's this going?
There's a show in Australia called Lego Masters, which is everything you can expect it to be. It's like MasterChef, but with Lego. And the host is Hamish Blake, who is of Hamish and Andy fame.
We've talked about him before.
He's kind of one of those sort of big sort of public figures. He's got radio shows. He's kind of a big deal. And then, as you might expect from kind of a big deal, he's got kind of a big deal watch.
What's he got?
A big boy Rolex. He's got the Sea Dweller.
The Deep Sea, right?
Deep Sea? Yeah, the bigger one. Yeah.
The 44mm big boy.
And you know how I know it's a big boy?
How do you know it's a big boy?
It is flopping all over his wrist. He's there presenting Lego shows. Just this giant chunk of steel. It's like a weapon.
It needs a few links taken out.
Yeah, it does. It's and it's just I find it very distracting in a really niche OCD way. So yeah,
you know what? You're right. I know what you're talking about exactly because I've seen him around sort of our old stomping ground, Richmond, years ago, and I remember seeing it. And it needs 2 links taken out.
So if you're listening to this, maybe OT is about to be acquired by the Hamish and Andy radio empire. Rumors are starting now. I mean, I didn't say it. Someone did. Just take a link out. Pop down to your local authorised dealer. They'll pop out the Loctite and make it fit a little bit better on the wrist.
Love it. Well, I had a package arrive.
Was it a very heavy watch that doesn't look good on your wrist?
No, it was 2 watches.
I'm not liking the direction this segment's taking.
All right, any guesses, Felix?
I can see it on our little video screen, so guessing's kind of pointless. That is
okay.
a cool bracelet.
What's the bracelet?
That is a rouleau bracelet on a Breitling chronomat. Oh, God, that's nice.
42, blue dial.
Yeah.
Red gold and stainless steel.
Mate, so we're not meant to be seeing each other, but I reckon you can. Do we live within 5 kilometres of each other?
I believe that the delivery of this watch to you is essential. So I'm sure we can bend the rules for our international listeners.
No, we're not going to bend the rules. That's a silly thing to do. No. We're currently, if you're listening to this at the moment, we're recording in some sort of lockdown situation, so we can't leave the house.
Lockdowns and curfews, but somehow I think it was TNT managed to get this bad boy to me.
Yeah, nice.
So
thank you, TNT.
This is the second time I've seen this watch, and I said the opportunity came up, and I said, yeah, send it down, give me some proper time with it. And you know what I said? Size the bracelet up correctly for me. So
you learned that from Hamish.
I actually did say that. Yeah, no, I actually did. I was measuring my wrist, and it was really funny because I got that text message. What size was it again? And I said 17 centimeters.
Why is that funny, Andy?
And I felt really weird sending that text message.
That's just really internal watch nerd references.
Moving on.
21 centimeter wrist, just so you know. It's Christmas coming up.
Okay. It's not about the size of the wrist, Felix. The second watch that I have,
Oh, and
again,
oh, hello. What's that?
can you
I
see
can.
this? The bezel standing
That
out.
is it concave or convex? One of the bezel that goes in. I think it's concave.
One of the
Yep.
Connors. Yeah. So this is the Super Ocean Heritage 57.
That looks great.
Black on the, it's hard to tell in this light, but it's sort of a really dark navy cobalt, I'd almost say. Blue,
Mm.
darky blue.
Yeah. Cool, cool,
Maybe
cool,
not
cool, cool,
cobalt.
cool, 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 cool.
Uh, Again, I really like this watch. I really like the size. I really like the
Yep.
proportions. It's 42,
What's
but it
the
really
what
doesn't feel
what's the
42.
sticker price on those guys?
I am going to tell you that it's under $7,000. I'm going to
You
have a
might be
look.
lying to me by $1,000 because you're Andy Green and that's what you do. Uh,
No, I 6,600 on the mesh bracelet.
boom. So even cheaper on Leatherbot, maybe.
On leather, this is Australian dollars. On the black calfskin leather with the folding clasp that I have this on, it is loading at 6,350.
That is and yeah, I'm assuming it's some sort of ETA in there, or is it the
Yeah, caliber 10 by the Breitling
who
caliber
knows?
10, which
Who knows
I'd
what that
imagine
is?
is cost certified, 42 millimeter case. Again, the dimensions are really deceiving. It's not like as thick. I'm pretty sure I've read that it's under a centimeter, under sort of 10 mils in height, and it's got to be like it's really,
Comfy?
yeah, it's nice on.
Would you say?
I'll post
Would
some
you?
pictures up.
Hang on. He's a maybe making you choose between your two favorite children, Chronomat or 57.
Ooh, I mean, there's so
Don't
the
think
the
about it
Chrono
too much. Just which one are you going?
Chronomat because I have enough divers and I don't think I own a chronograph.
Good answer. I think.
Yeah, I like the chronograph.
Yeah, I think the bracelet alone would sell me on the Chronomat.
I look at it and I'm still not sold on the two tone over the steel. It is a nice looking watch, but
Yep. Do you know what?
it's more like
I've got a
17
thought,
grand, I
Andy
think.
Green. What if the Chronomat was beautifully engraved?
Now you're talking.
Yes, we are. We are about to get. I don't know. What do we? Let's just call him Johnny. I don't have any superlatives up my sleeve at the moment, but
King Nerd, Johnny Dow. Look, he's an engraver, but he really cut his teeth at Purdey and Sons. From there, he cut steel and gold and precious things. He went on from Purdey to work within the Richemont Group on a few watches that
Purdey is the Richemont
catapulted him
Group.
to within the Richemont Group. He started working with George Bamford from Bamford Watch Department. He's done stuff with Scully Gin, Harley Davidson, Leica, Garshing. Yeah, Master and Dynamic
Yeah, cool, cool,
headphones,
cool.
Urwerk, and he's a full-time independent engraving king. Let's get him on the phone.
Yeah, let's stop talking. Let's start dialing. I've got a question for you, Andy.
Yes.
Our next guest, if they
Mm.
were a pro wrestler in the WWGB, I don't know what the Great British version of WWE would be. What would their
Mm.
walk-on song be?
Oh, it would be like some grime rap or something,
I've
right?
I've I've got a I've got a very definite answer.
It'd be like
Uh,
Stormzy or something
I was
for this
going
guest.
Run the Jewels.
No, I reckon Stormzy. I reckon some grime rap.
Okay,
Do you
okay.
know
Well,
what? Yeah, that would probably be my first answer. One of those, you know,
we nailed it.
choices. But I'd probably go a bit more old school and pick something like Stone Cold's, entrance music or something. You know,
Okay,
some
so one of the classics.
glass
Okay.
shattering or something. You know.
Yeah, okay, something sort of theatrical. Well,
Yeah.
Who is this geezer, Felix?
we're
Who have
not
we got
talking
on
to
the line?
Stone Cold Steve, sadly. We're talking
We've got
to
Mr. Enthusiast on the line, right?
this is a shambles, Andy. This is shambolic. We are speaking to Johnny Dowell, otherwise
Who's that?
known as King Nerd.
Thanks, guys. Nice to meet you.
Johnny, great to have you join OT for a chat. How's everything going with you?
Everything's good. Everything's good. You know, despite the pandemic and being locked up indoors, it's not too bad.
Etc.
Yeah, it's
Well,
pouring.
Johnny,
It's pouring down here at the moment, so that makes it a lot easier. You know, good old English weather.
yeah, aside from being in sunny Britain, we know who you are. But why don't you tell us the King Nerd story for the listeners who might not know who you are and how you got started out doing what you do?
Um, trying to keep it relatively short, so I don't bore you. But
No, you could never bore us.
basically, I studied art, and ultimately my goal was to go somewhere like Central St. Martin's and, study fashions, something along those lines.
Posh.
And and basically, when I was coming to the end of my studying, I actually came across a James Purdey and Sons catalogue in my uncle's house. I'd been in my uncle's house many a times, but obviously weren't interested in seeing this catalogue. And one day I sat there and opened it up and said to him, like, "Wow, I've never seen this kind of engraving before." And
Can I just
yeah, go
interrupt you
on.
for a second? Purdey and Sons is, I think, probably a fairly well-known name in England, but down here in Australia, that might need a little bit of explanation. Who are Purdey and Sons?
They're shotgun and rifle makers. So the best way to describe them in that world of shooting, they are basically the Rolls Royce or Bentley. That's how high up they are. They've over their 200-year history, they've done everything from the royal families
Hmm.
guns to famous celebrities, all sorts of people. Some of their some of the shotguns go up to like the price of £200,000. And that's a pretty
Wow.
standard one.
Now, was it Guy Ritchie that had Purdey, or did he go with the competition?
I think he's got Holland and Holland,
I'm
but
sorry, that's
he.
very rude.
It, no. But you usually find that you hear that one person sort of likes one of the two. So Holland and Holland might be the Bentley of shotguns, and Purdy's will be the Rolls Royce. But
Sure.
normally, what you find is they have one of each anyway, somewhere in their
Okay,
collection.
sure. Yeah.
Naturally.
Yeah, because they can.
So I distracted you from your story about you checking out some catalogues in the family home. What happened then?
I just sort of asked my uncle a load of questions and said, how's this done and stuff like that. Because originally, I don't know about you guys, but whenever I thought of engraving, I just thought of, sort of jewelry engraving, on rings and someone's names, stuff
Mm.
like that. But
Phone numbers on pet tags.
yeah, but it, you've seen some of the Purdy stuff. It's very detailed. People have portraits and animals and
Hmm.
all sorts, and then you've got all the ornate scrolls and plenty of other stuff that you can have. So he sort of spoke to him and said, "Look, I can ask for you and see what they're doing, if they are trying to find a new engraver or anything like that." And he came back to me. I don't know if it maybe helped because he was my uncle, but they wanted to see me and see, everything I had done with, my studying of art and stuff like that. So I had to bring in a load of work, and they offered me an apprenticeship. And basically, you have a 3 month probation. So whilst you're in that 3 months, you have someone who's teaching you, but they can basically tell whether you're going to be able to do something like this or not, just in those
Hmm.
3 months. And if you do pass that 3 months, you then will be taught for 5 years to
Wow.
engrave.
So that's like
And
a 5-year apprenticeship sort of situation?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Wow. So you got the job at Purdey. You obviously completed the 5-year apprenticeship, and you hung around for a little while.
Yeah, I was there for a total of 15 years.
Wow.
Geez, that's a long
Good
time.
stint.
It
And
is a
what?
long time, yeah.
And you were never, engraved anything prior to starting there. You never sort of
No, never,
come
never.
across it.
But my main thing in school and stuff was always art. I was
Mm.
that was that was the one thing I could say I was relatively pretty good at. Everything
Mm.
else, maths and stuff like that, forget it. I wasn't even that interested in it in school and stuff. So it was kind of I stayed on that kind of art route, and yeah, everything went from there really.
Uh,
And how long would you spend, engraving one of these 200,000 pound shotguns?
Well, it really depends on what you would have on the
Hmm.
gun. Some people go for a traditional, we call it a rose and scroll pan, a
mm.
standard fine, which is it's just a load of little sort of scrolls joined together that flow off each other, and something like that might be 150 hours, say. But then from there, people have gold elephants put into the guns, and we've had people wanting to match like a pair of guns to their sleeve tattoos, and something like that
Oh
might
wow.
take up to like 500 hours.
Yikes.
So it really depends on what they have. You know, the
That's really
more
cool.
the more you have, the longer it takes, basically. And you're on a waiting list as well, so you might not get that gun for maybe 2 years. You know,
Yeah, sure.
maybe even longer.
Right. And so speaking of waiting lists, now we met in the world of watches, and I
Yeah.
know probably most of our listeners will have heard your name because of the work you've done in watches, but somewhere along that 15 years of working for Purdey, a watch kind of fell on your desk to engrave. Can you tell us how and why you started engraving watches?
So I'm sure you guys know that Purdy's is actually owned by the group Richmond, and
We had heard, yeah.
yeah, and they have you know the names underneath their umbrella. They have Panerai to Purdey to Chloe bags. You know, they have a lot of luxury
Hmm.
brands. JLC, and basically one day we had the people from JLC come in and say, look, we want to do something to some Reverso watches, but we feel like it's too detailed for what we have in house. Is there any way
Really?
someone in Purdy's could do it? And I could be completely wrong on this because it was so long ago now. It was a good, well, now looking back at it, it's probably like 12 years ago, maybe longer.
Hmm.
And I believe it was for a couple in Spain, and they were like part of their version of like the royal family or something like that. And
Cool.
and they wanted two flowers. So each Reverso case back had like a different flower on each of them, and it meant something to that couple. So they asked me to do that, and at that time, I don't even think I had really seen engraving on watches. Like I know it had
Mm.
been done, but I'd never really shown any interest in it. I did that and I gave it back to them. They loved it. They sent me a little package with a load of JLC like goodies and stuff like that in it.
Uh-huh.
I remember taking one photo of it, and to this day I can't find that photo now, which is a shame because ever since then I take photos of everything I do. So it's kind of like the lost project that I did that I don't have the pictures for it anymore.
I'm sure it'll show up at Sotheby's in 50 years' time, so keep your
Yeah,
eyes open there.
yeah, maybe I won't even recognize it probably. And I don't think I signed.
Whose shonky work is this? Yeah,
Yeah,
you'll.
yeah, and I loved doing it. Um, And what was quite weird is before I actually did that watch, no offense to what I was doing at Purdy's, but because I was not really into shooting, I never came from that background or anything like that.
Hmm.
And I loved fashion and art and painting and stuff like that. I always immediately from starting at Purdy's, I was like, oh, I want to engrave something that's not to do with shooting, and I want to engrave it on other things as well.
Mm.
So that was a great introduction into different products. The JLC project that I did, and from there it just sort of gradually and slowly built its way from that watch into many other products.
Yeah, so it planted a bit of a seed, and you kind of. I don't know that you did any others while you were at Purdy, but you kind of branched out and did a little bit of side hustling for a few pretty big businesses. Was the next one that you started to help out Bamford Watch Department?
Well, I did a couple more watch projects through Richmond. I did something with
Right.
Panerai, and there was another one as well. I'm trying to think who it was.
Do you remember the Panerai?
Yeah, it had like that was something that I sort of kind of helped with the guy who taught me. So they asked him to do. It was one of you've seen them, where they have the case on the front and it shuts
Yeah.
Yeah,
over the
like
dial.
a Hunter's. Is that like a
No,
pocket
it's
watch
not one
sort
of
of
them
thing?
ones because they came a lot later than ones.
Ah,
But
okay.
I remember, I believe it was like an underwater scene, and it was like a guy on a like
On
one
their
of them,
little
almost like
submarine torpedo things.
yeah, that sort of thing. Yeah, that's it,
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, cool.
And I think they after that went and don't quote me on this, but I feel like they might not have all been hand engraved after the first originals, but I'm not
Okay.
sure. So don't
Okay.
I don't want to
Well,
get in
well,
trouble for that. But
well, we're recording it, so
So
it's kind of quoting you, but we'll definitely check that out.
yeah.
Before we
Yeah,
sort of jump into what the many things you've been doing since, I've got a bit of maybe a basic question. What?
yeah.
How do you engrave?
How do
Like,
I engrave?
what's the process like? For someone that I've seen the final product, but you might not know. Like, is it a machine? Is it by hand? What do you have a range of tools, or is it one basic thing?
So I have very very small tools that are made out of like a mild steel, and they are shaped to certain angles to create the sort of, let's say, the cutting section at the top of the tool.
Hmm.
It's really hard to explain, obviously, over this. I could maybe send you guys some photos at some point, but before I'd engrave anything, everything would be drawn by hand. It
Hmm.
would all be then scaled down, and then I would do a similar sort of process to what you would do with tattooing. I'd create a transfer that then puts my work onto whatever product or project I'm
Mm,
doing at the time, and then from there I will basically, the way I do it is I try and get all the outlines first, and then all the detail that go into whatever it is I'm doing, I do that after, you know just looking at my own reference, my own picture or something like that, and I go from
Hmm.
there. But they're very small tools. They're all sharpened under like a microscope, on like a diamond stone. And depending on the how hard the metal is, you could be polishing that stone every 3 or 4 minutes. If it's quite a soft material, you can sometimes sharpen and shape your tool to a certain way where you don't have to sharpen it that often. You could maybe sharpen it once or twice a day because the
mm,
material that you're cutting is quite soft.
God,
Very cool.
super technical.
Yeah,
Yeah, must require surgeon's hands.
yeah, yeah. I've got a lot of
Yeah.
patience. I've got a lot of patience for this, but if my kids are asking me 100 times for a biscuit, I haven't got much patience for that.
Okay, so let's get into the media engraving. Let's talk about Bamford because that was a pretty, I think, pivotal moment in your engraving journey. I know you kind of dipped your toes in the water of engraving watches
Yeah.
whilst you're at Richmond, but George Bamford came along and sort of requested your help or whatever happened. But I'd love to hear the story of kind of how you have grown with Bamford over the years in the kind of engraving space alongside him in customization of watches.
Um, the Bamford one was sort of a strange one because we both were following each other on Instagram. Like when people were really sort of first on Instagram, and
Hmm.
I'd see his watches. He'd be liking my stuff, but I never really looked any further into it. I just thought, oh, this guy's liked a couple of my pictures. I've liked a couple of his, and then someone said to me, they were like, that's um, it's the guy who does the big customizing of the watches and stuff. And I
Mm.
was like, what do you mean? And they said, he literally is the guy to go to get
The
your what
guy. Yeah.
the guy, which he is. And I just like looked into it a little bit more, and I sort of I think I sent him a message, or I wrote a post, wrote something on one of his pictures saying, I love this watch. This watch is great, um, something like that. And he then messaged me and said, what do you want to pop in and we'll have a little chat. And it was only then that I realised that the Hive, where Bamford is,
Yeah.
based, is literally right next door to the James Purdey and Sons, main shop in Mayfair. And I
South
thought,
Audley Street, right?
yeah, South Audley Street. And I
Yeah.
thought,
Yeah.
wow, it's literally like one. It's on the same street. It's like 5 or 6 shops down.
Mm.
And yeah, I went to meet him. Like a couple of days later or something like that, and we got on really well straight away. And um, it was quite funny because I was in there and I wanted to make a good impression, and we're talking about stuff. I had actually engraved. I had a Panerai case back from something I did years ago through Purdy's, and they had left me one that I was meant to sort of work on for them, and they
Hmm.
never gave it. They just said, hold on to it, keep it, whatever. We don't need it back. And I kept it for ages. And on the back of it, before I met George, I basically thought, you know what, I'm going to do something on this so I can show him. and I put some patterns on it, and I put Snoopy in the middle.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, right.
So I don't have the whole watch that, but I've still got the case back. I'll send you a picture of it. And
Yeah, please.
I bought that into George, and his eyes like lit up because he loves Snoopy and stuff like that. And he was like, right, I need you to do like a samurai themed, like Japanese culture, everything, dragons on this watch. And he's like talking to me 100 miles an hour. And I was like, oh my God, like, what am I actually, what do you actually want me to do kind of thing? You're not, you're just like throwing 100 ideas at me. And then, after like 5 minutes of him just like throwing out all of his like ideas, he went, do you know what? He called one of his watchmakers and he said, can you just bring the whole of that watch down? And I'm just going to give it to Johnny now. Just take it home, do what you want on it. He was like, do something Japanese, and I'm sure it's going to be pretty cool. And
Oof.
I just basically I left the hive with like this, brand new watch, and I was just like, what the fuck? Like, I'm gonna have to put this in my rucksack and just take this home and do
What
what
watch
I
was it?
can. It was a Rolex GMT. I can't remember. I have got it on my phone somewhere. That was the first
Oh.
one I ever did. But yeah, it was a good, it was one of the top end Rolexes.
Mm-hmm.
It was stainless steel. Yeah, and I
It
took
was.
that.
That's right. I think you've shown me a photo. I think it's a GMT Master. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is. It's a good. It's one of the big chunky ones, and it's
Mm.
got lots of canvas on it. And down one side of the strap, I put like a Japanese inspired dragon, and then on the other side, I had like a samurai with like a sort of the war mask on, and
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
back, I had another samurai mask, and I think it had dragons along the side of the casing as well. Yeah.
Very cool. And then that wasn't the last watch you did for George.
No, that. Sorry, did you say is that the last one I
That
did?
No, that wasn't. What happened
No,
then?
but you know what's really funny actually, because when I started doing like my own private work that wasn't gun related, because obviously when you work for a company like Purdey's, the last thing you would ever do is work for a competitor whilst you're working for Purdey's. So they they knew of George and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
what I would do is because I didn't really have the time, I had to have a full time job and work on this thing that George had given to me. So I was basically using every single lunch break I had.
Hmm.
Yep.
Weekends, I wouldn't even have weekends. I would just be, working on this project. So I was basically, I had no weekends. I was just sort of, I really wanted to work on these different products and different projects. So I had a full time job while I was doing this for George. So I would say to him like, George, I've got my full time job, so if you don't mind waiting a little bit longer, I will get it to you. But obviously, I'm doing it in my own time and stuff like
Hmm.
that. And he was, he was really supportive of that. And he was like, "No, I understand. Just keep going. I'm sure it'll be great." So from then onwards, I did. I can't even remember how many watches I did for George, but I did all of these whilst I was working for Purdy's,
Hmm.
Mm.
but in my own time. People would come up and go to me and Purdy's like, "What are you do?" Like, "Wow, what are you doing?" And I'd be like, "I'm doing a custom watch for George." And obviously, you're seeing guns all day come through there, so it
Yeah.
was quite it was quite fun for other people to see as well.
And you
Um,
say for George, but it was for George's customers, right? As
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it
It was for his
was.
client. So he'd come to me and say, look, a guy wants something to match his, I don't know, his car or his family crest, but he wants this old traditional kind of pattern around it. Or someone might say, I want something super contemporary, um, you know, a certain pattern down the strap or just on the case back. And we'd just sort of go back and forth. And the client would say, oh, no, I don't like this. Can you change it to that? And they'd then match it with their dial as George does, and coat. Some of them were coated in black, so I'd engrave the whole thing, and then they'd coat it in black, so the engraving was really, really subtle. And then they'd put diamonds around the bezel, So we did so many different projects.
How long were you working for George and doing these other projects before you had to quit Purdie and kind of go into full time King Nerd, whatever that may be?
I probably worked at Purdey's for a good 3 years whilst doing all these other projects.
Moonlighting.
Yeah,
Moonlighting.
and I was sort of just by chance, I was like, I'd meet one person and I'd meet another person, and I think I was actually working at Purdey's when I met you, Andy.
Yeah, you were. You were. You
Really?
snuck out on
Um,
a lunch break or something.
yeah, to get a coffee or something like that, wasn't it? And
Yeah, yeah, monocle.
yeah, that's it. Yeah. Oh, what I'd do to go there now. Um, Yeah, and and then I think a similar thing happened with Linda Verdelin. Actually, we were sort of following each other on Instagram, and I remember I had never heard of them, and then I went to Portugal once, and we had like we had rented a house, and this house was lovely, and in the sort of main lobby they had sort of these magazines on yachts and fast cars and other stuff,
Sure.
and I remember just sitting there and I was flicking through this magazine, and I think people like you know JLC and all these other people were advertising in it. And then I came across a Linda Verdelin watch in there. And
Mm.
straight away, I just, I've always liked watches, but I don't know I'm not like you guys. I don't know all the code numbers and all that sort of stuff. And I remember seeing this Linda Verdelin watch, and it was a picture next to, you remember that thing they used to put on the front, and it was like digital, like when you dive.
Oh, like a dive computer or something.
Yeah, it sort of clicks onto the top of the watch, and it kind
Ah,
of
yeah, yeah,
measures
yeah,
loads
yeah,
of
yeah.
different sort of stuff. And they had that in the magazine. I remember looking at the watch and thinking, oh, that's quite different. I've never seen a watch that sort of shape, and it just stood out amongst a lot of sort of watches I had seen before, basically. More well-known brands, and we just sort of again, I followed them on Instagram and they followed me back, and they must have seen stuff I'd done for George, and we just sort of one thing led to another, and then they said, oh, have you ever heard of our watches? And I said, no, I heard of them when I was in Portugal and stuff like that. And one thing led to another, and I met the guys, Morton and Jean, at their
Mm.
place in Notting Hill, and
Yeah.
we just got on really well. And from there, I immediately I said, look, if I'm going to engrave for you guys, it can't be what I do for Purdy's, because it just doesn't go with your design.
Mm.
It's not gonna sell, no matter how good it is, because you guys have that sort of, I always call it like that futuristic kind of shape. Everything's really super straight. There's a lot of angles on it. It has to be something that complements the watch. It can't be just a load of scrolls, because it just won't work. And they were really supportive in me being able to sort of draw my own designs and let me have free reign. And I still say it till today. I always find that my path might have been different if I constantly kept looking for the big brands to let me do something. When you go to those independents, they're more likely to sort of say, you know what, that might be good for us, because we're letting him bring in his ideas in alongside ours,
Yeah.
instead of saying like, this is what our clients like, we have to have this.
Yep. You
It's
can only touch the case back.
Yeah, exactly. And that's nothing against those, because the bigger people I've met have now allowed me to do more, because
Mm.
maybe they've seen what I've done in the past. But from the beginning, it was the independents that are constantly trying to change things themselves to impress people and show people what they can do. So they're more likely to say, you know, yeah, we're happy for you to, go for that design. We think that might work, and it's very different to what we've seen before.
Yeah, sure.
What did you end up doing for Linda Verdelin? It was a Octo.
Yeah, so we did 3 editions in total. So
Mm-hmm.
like we did a series of 3 different projects, and the first one was the Octopus Reef, and
Yeah.
that
Mm-hmm.
had like a rose gold bezel. And what we did is we had the octopus tentacles around that bezel, and then at the bottom you had the reef, like the coral reef and stuff, and then at the top you had like the bubbles, where they would be, rising to the surface. And what was great about that is there wasn't really any symmetry involved. Like when I've done patterns in the past for Purdy's and a couple of other watch companies, people are obsessed with symmetry, because a watch is very symmetrical when you look at the case. You look at it dead on, it's perfectly symmetrical. So we were like, we want to be able to look at this watch from one angle, and it tells a completely different story on one side to the other side. You've really got to turn that watch around to understand everything that's going on. You can't just look at it dead on and say, oh, okay, that's the pattern. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that 100% does make sense. Something I find really interesting in listening to you talk and looking at your Instagram and knowing a bit about your work is how it sort of seems to have either evolved over time or you've developed a real sort of your own style. Like there's things that keep appearing. Like there's this sort of Japanese motif, and there's that really rich. Like those octopuses are, they're so striking. I remember when they first came out. Um, what? How much is this sort of what the client wants, and how much is it what you are drawn to as an artist?
It's a hard one because obviously you want the client to buy something you create, but I think you've got to sort of, how do I put this best?
Got to back
I
yourself.
don't know. Yeah, you kind of, you want to do something different, but obviously there's a part in the back of your mind where you keep saying, "Oh, is someone going to buy this? Are people even
Yeah,
going
got
to
to
like?
keep it
Are
commercial.
people going to even like this?" But then at the same time, you've got to try and, some things aren't always going to be a success. And that'll be a mistake you might learn from in some way. You might change something the next time round. But I think it's always really important to try and do something someone hasn't even done before, or something that makes that product and that brand stand out. Very
Yep.
similar to sort of the headphones I did with Master and Dynamic. I spent so many hours trying to draw something really modern, really out there that really matched the headphones. When really, in the end, I went back to a really traditional pattern because I thought, you know what, actually, no one's going to put a traditional pattern with something super modern, a real contemporary product. So it kind of just worked really well.
Yeah,
Does that make
true.
sense? Like
Yeah,
if I did a
100%.
super modern pattern, I mean, I'm not saying I couldn't do that in the future at all, but at that time I needed to do something that people say, oh, that's the kind of thing I would normally see on like an old pocket watch, or
Yeah.
I'd never imagine that on a pair of like luxury headphones. So
Yeah,
it
sure.
was almost like I'd spent ages trying to get this design that was connected perfectly with the headphones, but it wasn't actually a modern design like the modern design of the headphones. It actually was something that had been done hundreds of years ago. I went back to a pattern that had been sort of around Purdy's and old pocket watches. I went to those kind of patterns to
Yeah,
bring it
sure.
onto a modern product, and it worked really well.
One other sort of, I guess, motif I sort of see popping up in your work, and you've mentioned it already, is Snoopy. You, I understand, is it your own watch,
It
the
is my own
Amiga?
watch, yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about what's going on with that?
What's the watch and what have you done to it?
What have you done? What have
So,
you done to this lovely watch?
so basically, when I was doing the work for George, I remember I used to always go. I always loved going to the Hive because it's like a grown man's toy shop. It's got wicked books in there. It's got great toys. It's like walking into a James Bond sort of, I don't know, whatever
It's
James Bond
ridiculous.
lived in. Yeah, it's I expect one day I'm sure I'm going to be in there and George is just going to press a button and like an Aston Martin DB5 is going to come out under the table or something. And I remember just being in there all the time and seeing all these watches and thinking, oh, I really want one of these watches. I really want one of these watches. And at the time, I was sort of on, an all right wage, but I weren't going to go and spend money on one of these watches because I had other things to pay for. And I remember at one point I was very close to buying something from George, and then I had my first child, so I was like, I've got to buy nappies instead now.
I can relate. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I just kept it kept racking my brain. I was like, do you know what? I've got to do something that George hasn't got, like something he ain't got. And I was searching loads of stuff, and I was like, I'm going to engrave it. And you know, again, like the headphones, I was coming out with stuff that was too obvious. And then I thought I came across obviously Snoopy and the Omega connection, and I just thought, right, it's got to be something Snoopy, you know, because everyone loves these Snoopy watches, but I've got to have one that no one else has. And yeah, I was searching through different models and stuff like that, and then I came across the Schumacher edition. And straight away, as soon as I saw the Schumacher edition, I was like, right, I've got to connect Snoopy with Schumacher with Omega. And then it basically just ran from there, you know.
Now that's the bright yellow Omega, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean they do the red one, but I only bought the yellow one because I just
Yeah, the
prefer the
yellow's
color.
cool.
I think the yellow is really nice. It's bright, and I don't really wear red watches or anything red anyway. So yellow straight away was the one that I bought. And then I basically I got the watch, and do you know what's a funny story? Actually, I didn't look at how the size of the watch. So when I actually received it, I was like, Jesus, has this shrunk? Because it's the reduced one, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's like
Yeah.
a 36 or
Yep.
38 or something.
Yeah, that's right. And I was just like, I was quite pleasantly surprised actually because I've got really small wrists, you know, like, and I put on it actually fit perfectly. It wasn't too big. And straight away, I looked at the case back, and I didn't realize that, you know, it was going to have all of this stuff in the case back. You know, it's got is it the seahorse or the
Yeah.
on the back? And I was like, damn. So then I started contacting a load of people, you know, Craniots, a few other people on Instagram and stuff. And I was like, can you get me a case back? Do you know where I can get a case back for this watch, but with nothing on it? And everyone said to me that you're going to really find that hard to find something like that. You know, you're either going to have to get someone to make it, or I don't really know where you'll get one for that watch. Then I went to the people in Purdey's that I knew, and I said, look, do you think you could grind everything out of the back of this? You know, so I've got a complete blank canvas, and it became like a massive operation. Everyone was like, have you gone through it yet? Have you gone through it yet? And we had like micrometers. We were like really, like, people were doing this by hand to try and get this down. And
I feel bad for the Purdie customers who, you know, had to wait an extra couple of weeks for the £200,000 guns.
Yeah. And I remember we were getting really close, and I said, right, that's enough. Like, just leave it as that. You know, I think that, you know, I can polish it up a little bit, and once my engraving's over it, you know, you won't notice any little bits and pieces that might, you know, be different to what it was before. And what's quite interesting is when I started to inlay the gold 7, I was like so close. So when you take that case back off, if you look at it from the other side, you can see the metal is slightly raised where I'm almost about to go through the case back.
Whoa.
Okay.
It's got like a tiny, because I hadn't taken into account that they were going to grind this case down, and then obviously I then came out with a great idea. Oh, I'll put 24 karat gold in it, but then I hadn't put that. You know, I hadn't calculated the extra bit that I was going to be digging out. So I
Well, like
remember
you said, you weren't great at maths at school, so
exactly, yeah.
you get a free pass.
And I remember I thought, gosh, that doesn't feel very thick. So I remember taking it off the mount. I had it on. I looked and I was like, oh shit, you know, if I go any further, I'm going to go through this. So I had to basically leave it like that, and luckily it was enough to get the gold in and polish it off.
Amazing.
So
now,
you're not going to drop that, or, you know, put too much pressure on the back or anything.
super waterproof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you recently appeared on Hozinki telling exactly this story, which we can link up as well. And there's some great images, but basically it's Snoopy on the back with obviously the number 7, and it's a really cool look. And you did the clasp as well.
Yeah,
How's
the
that
clasp
worn
tab.
over the years?
It's been great actually. You know, stainless steel is a horrible metal to engrave, but it's, you know, I understand why they make watches in stainless steel, because you can beat the shit out of them and they survive, don't they? They they can take some beating. So it's
Yeah.
kind of, it's it's nothing. A polished brush or something can't sort of take a couple of scratches out, but it's really worn well, and it still looks fairly new, like when I bought it actually. So yeah,
Incredible. And now you've got a habit for ruining watches. I'm just kidding, but you've done something more recently, which is a series of, was it 6 submariners in collaboration with another geezer friend of ours, Mr. Enthusiast. This is a pretty cool watch, which we've briefly touched on the podcast before. But
Andy
it was
won't
6.
shut up about it. Every second
I
week,
love
he's
it.
got some new update about it.
Have you seen the boxes that they've gotten?
Oh my
But
God.
tell us about this project and maybe how distracting it was to collaborate with someone so handsome. And what was
Jeez Louise.
Oh my gosh! Do
Keeping
you know
your
what? He's
pants,
gonna love you
Andy.
forever for saying that.
couple of geezers.
Yeah, a couple of geezers. Even though Phil's not a real geezer because he lives in New York, so he doesn't really count as one. I keep telling him. Whereas I'm in London, so I'm an
Proper.
actual geezer. Yeah, proper. How did we come about doing that? So again, I had a sim. So what you see in those watches, I had thought of that idea several years ago, and at that time I didn't have the money to be able to just run with it, So it kind of just sort of went to the back of my mind, and I never did it. And then this guy Phil, who you'll know of, he had a similar idea, and basically we just happened to connect over social media, and we both realized we had this very similar idea, and it just went from there really. And a lot of back and forth.
And
We'd
so the
have
end product is a 14060 Submariner,
yeah.
sort of sandblasted. You've uh, completely like taken the bezel insert off. There's like a black diamond pip, and then you've done this. Tell us about the engraving that you've done on the dial, which you've skeletonized the hand so that you can see the engraving. But obviously that was your handiwork. Tell us about the dial.
So the dial is. Sorry, I'm just going to try and. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to find the actual name of the person we got inspiration through for the
Ooh,
art.
an actual person. What about
Well,
the
it's
octopus?
like an old. No, not the person. Not the person. I didn't mean the actual person with the octopus. Um,
So we're talking about the dial on the collab. Paint a picture of what scene is it, and maybe how long it takes, and how many you've done.
so that project we did a total of 6 watches. Originally, we were going to do just one watch, and see how people took it. But because people,
They took
it
it
was
well.
yeah, they took it really well, a lot better than we actually expected. Because me and Phil probably spent more time doubting what we were doing than we did on actually creating the watch. Um, so much back and forth. We probably did this design about, I don't know, 10 times or something. And we had something, and then we were like, oh, is it going to work? I don't know. Maybe we should just take that out and do something else. And it was just, and I think in the end, I was like, Phil, we're never going to release this watch if we don't just, decide on something. We could be doing this forever. Um, and yeah, so the designs for that watch are based on, oh gosh, I'm forgetting the bloody, sorry guys.
We'll find it. We'll link it
I've
up in
got,
the show notes.
yeah, it's the I'm trying to remember the year of the design. Sorry, I'm coming across really bad here with the.
So it's effectively an old school diver, and he's wrestling or wrestling off a very aggressive octopus, isn't he?
Yeah.
We've all been there.
And can I just say, Felix, we can relate a little bit to that collaboration story, doubting and putting things off, and then
Yeah,
if we
you
don't
just got to
do it,
do it, and I
yeah.
think it's something like I can't imagine you not looking at that Rolex and going, "This is incredible. Why haven't people done this before?" Because it's such a cool contrast, and it's just such an like. It seems effortlessly cool, but clearly there's a lot of effort that's gone into getting it right. So I'm glad you
Yes.
guys had that moment of those doubting
Yeah.
evenings, but
Well,
you've got it back together.
do you know what? This wasn't actually going to be the first design. We actually had a first design already drawn up, ready to go, but we decided, like, I'm not going to tell you what it is because we're going to use it at some
Yeah,
point.
cool, nice
But we just thought this would be a better first
entry point.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah. And originally we did toy with the idea of doing engraving on the strap and the case, and I said, look, you know, I think that's too close to what I've done before.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's not going to stand out. We also agreed, both of us, that we had to basically, strip Rolex from it.
yeah,
Mhm.
So
sure.
you've basically only got the template of it. There's no Rolex logo. There's no, we're not actually, we're not trying to sell it as an official kind of Rolex. It's just basically like two guys, have taken their own Rolex and gone, do you know what? I'm going to do something to this that isn't supposed to be based around, you know, the logo and the branding of Rolex. I'm going to put something that I want on it, and I'm going to customize it to hell, And we we originally were going to do different color hands, but then we realized that the hands had to be sort of skeletonized so you could see the engraving more.
Yeah,
Because
nice touch.
we kept saying to each other that the way what we base these watches around are pieces of art. So technically, we're not actually making these watches for you to tell the time.
Hmm.
You can tell the time on them, but we wanted to treat them like a limited run of, say, 10 pieces of art. Like an edition of 10 prints. They're
Yeah,
all
sure.
signed. If you own them, they're never printed again. Hopefully in years to come, this piece of art that you might have hanging on the wall might be worth something. And this is the way we wanted to treat this. There's only 6 made. We're never ever going to do this design ever again. They're all going to be signed. They've all come with a really nice box. And I don't know, 20 years, 30, 50 years time, people will look back on this and they'll say, like, there was only 6 of them. The artist, only wanted to do 6. They've never done anything like this again since. And we wanted it to be like a wearable piece of art. Whether people actually wear them or store them like an actual print, I don't know. But we
Hmm.
wanted it to be based around that more than the actual function of having a customized watch that you wear around telling the time. That's not what we were thinking of.
We'll link this up, Johnny. And are these all sold out now, or can some
Well,
lucky listeners pick?
we were quite lucky because we sold 4 before the pandemic, and then I'm guessing that when the pandemic hit, people didn't need a man fighting an octopus on a watch during the pandemic. I think they needed
Well,
face masks and toilet roll instead. So there's two left that there's a couple of people that are interested in them, but yeah, we never
Andy,
expected
can I just say,
it.
there's you and there's me. There's 2 of us, and there's 2 watches, and we've both got
uh,
birthdays coming up.
we do, and Christmas coming up. All right. Well, we'll link up. We'll link up how to purchase those last 2. Sorry, Felix. Kick
No,
on.
that's okay. They'll be gone. But you don't just do watches. Something I find that I find myself drawn to maybe even more than your big sort of scale watch work are your coins. What are they about? What's the why deface the Queen's currency?
Um, Again, that sort of came about by chance when I was in Purdy's. I'd have a couple of coins, a little bit of spare time, and I just thought, oh, I'm going to put, you know, a hat and a spliff in the Queen's mouth, and
Oof,
throw,
such a
throw it out
rebel.
there, or a cigar or something like that. And I remember sort of thinking, I know, sorry. I remember I went to the shop and I had my first coin that I had engraved in my pocket, and I completely forgot it was in there. And then I paid for something with that coin, And then I
That's
only
great.
realized like a day later, I was like, where's that coin gone? I can't find that bloody coin. And then the penny dropped, no pun intended. And then I just realized, damn, I've given it to that guy around the corner when I bought a sandwich. And then it just popped into my head like, oh, I might start doing some of these like one-off coins and just holding on to them or giving them to maybe people I know, or maybe down the line someone might buy it. You never
And you
know.
just randomly sneak into circulation. And
Yeah, yeah,
But also you spend hours and hours, so that sort of 50 pence
yeah.
coin is
you're
sort
like
of
you're like the
500
Banksy of
quid.
currency.
Yeah, someone's looked at that and either been really drunk and gone, has the Queen really got a cigar in her mouth, or is someone? Why is my or had a go at someone at the shop saying you've given me like a dodgy coin,
That's
um,
amazing.
and
But
yeah, from there I ended up doing a couple for sort of various people, and then it just sort of again it kind of sort of built from there
yeah,
into something else.
I really like them. Like I think they're really uh I'm thinking of the one with Elton John, and the more recent, the very powerful one with for about George Floyd.
Yeah,
There's something sort of talismanic about them. Like I think coins are really sort of symbolic objects, and I think you sort of like what you've done with them, turning them into these tiny bits of art, has really invested a totally different meaning into an everyday object, and I find that really, really, really compelling. And I just love them. I can't get enough of them. So do more of those.
And like we said, our birthdays are coming up, because I did see Mr. Flawless, Greg Una got a little birthday coin, so we'll send the dates through.
But yeah, I think we'll
uh,
definitely have to link these up, because it might not sort of make a lot of sense. What are you talking about? But I think they're really beautiful little objects. And can you sort of tell us a
well,
little bit about? Oh, yeah, sorry, you go.
no, I was just going to say, like I, as far as art goes, I love drawing, I love painting. I can do that sort of stuff, and I do that stuff. But the way I look at the coins is, I actually feel like that canvas has been potentially around the whole world.
Mm,
Someone might have come to
Mm.
England, had some spare coins, taken them back to say Australia. Said, "Oh, I don't need these." Given them someone else. That person's taken them to England, then gone on holiday to somewhere else. These, money changes so many hands. I feel like it's, you know, maybe not for good reasons, but it's so important, isn't it? Money,
Yeah, it
in the
makes the
world.
world go round.
Yeah, exactly. And just to be able to use something that makes the world go round and take away something on it, or put something onto this canvas that is so important, like the George Floyd coin I did for the Black Lives Matter. That at that time, you're using a canvas which is, in so many ways, you look at it, is so important to what's going on in the world at the moment. Money, it's, you're putting a really strong message onto this canvas,
mm.
and that's the way I look at them, really.
Yeah, love that. Now, another really cool project that you've done, you've engraved all sorts of things, and I don't think we're going to have time to dip into all of them, but we'll link up your profile, which will show it all. But you did a very, very cool Leica M6.
Oh, here we go.
Tell me about that. Who was it for? How long did it take? Paint a picture.
The Leica M6, again, it's another project I've wanted to do for years, but I didn't have a Leica. I didn't have the money to go out and buy a Leica and just completely engrave it. And then my friend Gavin Bond, who's one of the big contributing photographers for GQ magazine, I became friends with him, and we were out one day having a drink, and he was like, I need to get you to engrave something. And in my head at the time, I was thinking, I'd love to engrave one of his cameras, but I'm not just going to say, give me your whatever 10 grand camera and let me do something to it.
Yeah.
So I was sort of kind of hoping he would say it, and he did. He did. He was like, maybe you can engrave one of my Leicas. That would be amazing. And straight away I jumped at the chance. I was like, do you know what? I've been, hoping you would ask that. And Yeah, he did, and he liked what I'd done on the headphones, and he thought, a modern product like the Leica he had would be great with, you know, this traditional kind of style. And he thought it was quite a classy look, and he thought it would lend well to the Leica. So we went with that, and I said, we've got to try and put your signature in there some way, so years from now when you're not around, someone can link that to you, and that's why
Mm.
it has the Bond signed on the top, Gavin's surname, probably the coolest surname ever.
And he's a very talented photographer. He's actually, he's photographed Bond girls, Tom Cruise, Paul Smith, even Takeoff. I think from Migos. He's done amazing,
He's
amazing
done,
shots. Everyone,
everyone, Jay-Z, Beyonce, numerous GQ covers, many other magazine covers. Yeah, he's a very talented photographer, and he's a great guy as well. Um,
very cool.
yeah, that's one of my favorite projects, just because I love
And
Leica, and I just really enjoyed doing it, and it was just different. Again, it was down that path that I always want to take. It's the way I want to push myself forward, is by doing things that people haven't done or don't do, or something that people are going to say, oh, I'd love to have that, because not everyone can have a Purdey shotgun. Not
Yeah,
everyone wants that. More people want to have a camera or a pair of headphones, or maybe even an engraved coin, than they do an actual shotgun, because that's a
mm,
particular type of people that like to shoot. But more people want to photograph and do them kind of things. So yeah, I love doing that, and I'm working on a couple at the moment who I can't mention, but you will see them at some point.
yeah, awesome. It's
very
sort of,
cool.
I
Very
think it's
cool.
it's what I find fascinating about what you do is that you're pushing like really traditional crafts, like that are synonymous with shotguns and heraldry and all that, into like a brave new space. And I think it's really, it's exciting, the sort of the
Yeah,
stuff you can do.
yeah, definitely. And it's kind of helped me to progress with the people I meet and stuff, because they look at what I've done, and I, their brain must sort of say to them, how can I get this into my product or into a project I'm
Mm,
doing? Because this, I've never seen it done on my I don't know, whatever it is they're doing. So I think by trying to take a really traditional old school craft like engraving, which is kind of a dying art in a way, because you can get a lot of things laser engraved now, but there's a fine balance between having these original designs and an original craft that then morph into something else. It's about the whole story, isn't it? It's not just
Totally.
you know it's yeah.
Well, the only way to keep up to date is to follow you on Instagram, because I know you do have some exciting new projects. So that's at King Nerd on Instagram, and that's where you kind of see all the new drops. Johnny, how else can people support your work and kind of support you in the freelance in engraving life?
um I've never been asked that question.
maybe
um
just commission some work.
Commission some work. Get
yeah, I mean,
something with a lot of metal, nice soft metal,
yeah.
and send it over. Uh, well,
Yeah, Instagram is my main thing. I will have
let's
a
blow you up.
my website will be live in a few months as well. We're halfway through that. But yeah, that's what I do is quite niche. So you're not going to go online and be able to
Mm,
buy 20 original products. I like to do things as limited edition runs or one-off pieces. Like they mean more to me when I do them
very
that
cool.
way.
No, I love that. Well, Johnny, as we kind of wrap the chat up, have you seen a watch that you look at it and you go, "Gee, that's a great canvas to engrave"?
Yeah,
I mean, the best canvas I think I'm ever going to engrave is the Urwerk watches that I did, because
yeah, sure,
they're really big, and they've got a lot of space. It's perfect for an engraver. Um,
makes
but
sense.
I don't know. I've got my eye on. I like the Octo Finissimo. I think
Oh,
that's
lovely.
an amazing watch. The design behind that is just amazing. Um, that's that's a great watch.
We've got a proven history of engraving very thin bits of metal, so you should be fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool. And
Uh,
what about a more general sense? What can you recommend to our listeners that they might not have heard of, or something you'd like to shine a light on and give a bit of love to?
what do you mean, as in watches or brands
No,
or?
just
Whatever.
anything.
What have you been enjoying lately? What are you excited for?
I'm probably just bigging myself up here, but I'm quite looking forward to Guy Berryman's Ratino brand, because I'm doing something with them, which again I can't mention what it is, but
Whoa,
it's gonna. Well,
that's pretty cool. So Guy Berryman is obviously from Coldplay.
yeah, he's got an amazing clothing brand coming out, which I've seen, quite a few of the pieces he's done, and it's like high quality stuff, and he's kind of, it's going to be a little bit similar to, it's going to be limited runs, so it's not going to be like 10,000 t-shirts. It's going to be maybe 100 t-shirts,
That's
possibly
cool.
all numbered, and they'll be like the best materials, and once they're gone, they're gone. They'll release a
Wow.
new edition. It's that's pretty cool, and the project we're working on together is going to be a one that you guys would definitely like. So I'm quite excited about that.
Oh, teaser alert.
I think
Okay.
we're going
All
to
right.
need
Well,
to
the only
change.
way.
We're going to have to change your name from King Nerd to King NDA.
Do you know what people used to say to me? I've signed an NDA, and I was like, "What? I don't even know what an NDA is. Never even. I honestly didn't have a clue what it was. I had to Google like, what does NDA stand for,
Sure.
and then a few
You're a bit
years
more
later,
familiar with them now. Yeah.
I've signed quite a fair few now, which is really annoying because you can't. I'm desperate to tell people what I do, but I'm like, if I do that, I'm going to be like locked away for 25 years or something.
Yeah, no, not worth it.
Yeah.
Not worth it.
Last question for you, Johnny. If someone has a watch that they want engraved, will you take that work on? How long will it take? And what can they expect?
Again, it depends on what you're having done. For how long it takes, really. So whatever the design's going to be, I'll have to take that into account and then let them know how long it takes. But I don't just engrave anything, so I won't take on every project. I have to be into that project, and I have to enjoy it myself. And
Makes
luckily I've
sense.
managed to get into a position now where I can do that. Whereas before I wanted to engrave every single thing I had.
Yep. You've
But
made it.
now, not quite. But I just like to be into that project and know that it's gonna, everyone else is going to kind of like it as well and think it's pushing things forward and not just just another engraved watch, or it has to be
Love
something
that.
completely different.
Well, Johnny, thank you so much for joining Felix and I. It's been a treat to chat.
It's
It's
been a
been
real
even better
pleasure.
to kind of watch you grow over the years since we first connected. And I remember, doing a light interview with you years and years ago that Felix probably edited. So it's really cool to see how your side hustles turn into the main hustle, and you've grown. And we'll link up all of your work and your Insta in the show notes, but at King Nerd is the best way to keep across Johnny.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Felix.
Yes, Andy
What
Green.
a geezer. Really interesting
Would
guy
you
to
say
talk
he was
to.
a diamond geezer?
Oh, he's a diamond in the rough.
Do you know what?
Just-
Yeah. Let's keep our UK listeners, and let's not piss them off. Let's stop pretending to be from England.
Geezer's just the only term I know to describe people like Johnny.
Okay.
I've seen that Omega Snoopy in person. It looks just as good, the engraving, and on the class, which is a risky spot to put it if you're me and you wear your watches like I do, but it looks just as good as the day he did it. What a guy. I'm just really excited to kind of hear and see what he gets up to next. I know he's got some pretty exciting saucy projects.
You just
in the
know
works.
he's got things he's signed off that he's like, oh, I just want to tell you about this, but he can't. Anyway, we'll have to get him on again when he can. So thank you again, Johnny. That was really great. King Nerd on Instagram. If you want to follow him.
Show notes are going to be big this episode.
Oh, God. Who's going to write them up?
Lengthy.
Yeah, if you want to follow us, ot.podcast, you can flick us an email for some watch matchmaking action or anything else. If you just want to say hi, that's fine. otthepodcast@gmail.com. And Andy, anything else we got to say?
Thank you to our producer, Major Tom Media, and thank you to our sponsors. Support OT, support Andy, support Felix by supporting our sponsors. Check them out. We link up all this stuff in the notes. And yeah, thanks for the ongoing support, guys.
Awesome. Well, we'll see you next time. And until then, bye.
Peace.